Welcome. Today is December 31st, last day of the year. Man, hard to believe it's gone by so fast. I'm your host, Patrick Stewart. I am the founder and chief editor of the Taoist Online. The Taoist Online is a Medium publication on medium.com where we post religious, philosophical, and spiritual articles every day, about 15 of them a day. And what is Taoism, you may ask? Well, it reaches into really everything in modern day. It is an ancient Chinese philosophy / religion founded by, founded by a legendary figure named Zhuangzi. Zhuangzi was a man, legend has it, that lived in ancient China, possibly a librarian, who was fed up with the world as it existed, and especially in China, the warring kingdoms, and decided to retire to the countryside. But on his way out of town, a border guard stopped him and asked him to write some words of wisdom. And so he wrote 81 poems in this book called the Dai De Jing. Sometimes spelled with a T, sometimes spelled with a D, but every week what I do is I go through this book chapter by chapter, and it's called 365 Dao, Daily Meditation by Ding Ming-Dao. Ding Ming-Dao does a wonderful job of taking these concepts and ideas and thoughts and bridging them into our modern lives. So come join me. Yes, here we are. Not only am I in the Taoist Online, we also have a new project that will begin in January of 2024, which sounds weird to say, 2024. But it is called Project Jade, and this is a professional, fully paid opportunity for the Taoist Online writers. If their piece is selected, we will be paying them just like any professional publication. It will be hosted at projectjade.net. So come by, take a look. I wanted to give back to everything the Taoist Online and our collection of 900 writers has given me, and this is going to be how we do it. Of course, the Taoist Online isn't going anywhere, but Project Jade will continue concurrently. So, do you have any New Year's Eve resolutions? You do that? I do that every year. Not to say I get them to be successful every year. But last year, 2023, worked out pretty good. My goal was to write more, and this time last year I was just some blogger on some website, and now it's a collection. Like I said, of over 900 writers. We'll hit our 1,000th writer sometime next month, which is just maddening, which is insane. I can't believe we've come quite so far. If you celebrate Christmas, I hope you had a good one. One of the things I received is this jade dragon from my wife. If you're watching the video on YouTube, you can see it here. If you're listening to the podcast, hey, I stream this through video every Sunday at 9 a.m. Come watch the video. But a jade dragon for Project Jade, which is going to be the big push for 2024. That's my New Year's Eve resolution, is to really put as much effort and make sure Project Jade is as high quality as the writers deserve it to be. They put in so much. If you're a writer, if you're hearing this, and you write for TTO, man, I can't thank you enough over the last couple of months. So kudos to you guys. All right, so let's get started with our chapters. We're on chapter 79, ironically called Spring, because we just started winter on December 21st. So here we go. The way this will work, for those who may be new, is I'll go ahead and read this very short chapter. It's usually only a page or two. Each chapter starts with a little poem, and then we will discuss it. And by discussing, I mean I talk about it and you listen. But hey, if you watch the live stream, you're welcome to chat, and we can go back and forth on it. All right, here we go. Chapter 79, Spring. Sun and moon divide the sky. Fragrance blooms on pear wood bones. Earth awakens with a sigh. Wanderer revels on the path alone. It is the time of equinox, when day and night are briefly equal. This day signals the beginning of spring. In the decreasing of light and the return of life to the frozen earth. Of course, this day only represents a moment in time. Spring has long been returning, and we know that summer will soon follow. The cycle of the seasons will continue in succession. There is no such thing as a true stopping in time, for all is a continuum. Nature makes its own coordinates as a mere outgrowth to its movement. It is we who see structure and give names to pattern. But who can begrudge temporary pleasures to a solitary traveler? Let us go out and enjoy the day, revel in the coming of spring, rejoice in the warming of the earth. For though the ground may be covered with frost, movement and growth are taking place all around us. Beauty barred fills our eyes and makes us drunk, as we wander the endless mountains and streams, filling our lungs with the breath of the forests. Let us take comfort in being part of nature, for life has enough misery and misfortune. That's true. Philosophy reminds us of enough of the transience of life. Give us the charm of the ephemeral, and let it silence all who would object. Okay, springtime, the passage of time, seasons. If you read a lot, you may find stories where people have become like hermit Taoists, where they kind of give up on society and they just want to go be in nature, and they go live in the forest and they only come in when they need something. And there are, times when I feel like that. I just want to give it all up and go into the woods, and you're like, man, this world is crazy. Like, I'm getting out of here. I'm gonna go live the natural life. And yeah, I wouldn't blame you. But here, Ding Ming-Dao really is getting at, I think, removing yourself from where you are to try and like escape isn't being your natural self. I mean, we are products of our generation. We're products of the society we live in. And displacing yourself as a means of escape is not the natural order of things, right? I was told this amazing story about these three painters and the emperor and the three paintings. The really short version of it is that one day there was the emperor of China wanted to find tranquility, peaceful tranquility. So he went to his servant and wanted a painter, asked for painters all across the land to see who could paint peaceful tranquility. The servant goes out and finds three amazing painters, and they both come back. So they paint their paintings, and the emperor goes to view them. He goes up to the first painter, and the painter has pictured this lush forest with birds chirping and, plants growing and all these things. And he's like, okay. Emperor's like, all right. He comes up to the next painting, and it's a snowy mountaintop, right? The snow, there's not even a single ripple, freshly fallen snow, right? Very, very smooth. And the Emperor says, well, okay, all right. And then he goes to the third painting. The third painting is this massive waterfall, like just smashing into rocks and, splashing everywhere. And the servant's like, oh my gosh, like, I'm so sorry, Emperor. Like, this is not what you asked for. He said he could do it for you. And, I'll take this away from you and you'll never have to hear or see from this guy again. And the Emperor says, no. He won. And of course the servant's like, what do you mean? Like, how, this isn't this, look, this waterfall, like, it's everywhere and it's crazy. And, everything's being broken and smashing into the rocks and the waves. And the Emperor says, well, look closely, look closer. So the servant looks, and next to the waterfall, almost underneath it, is a bird nesting in a tree, sound asleep, right? Not moving, nothing, just completely peaceful. And that's it. And he's found it. He found peaceful tranquility. So in this chapter, you don't find peace by removing yourself from everything, right? It's in being able to remain who you are, even if the world around you is freaking out, right? Like, not letting others move you. So to take that one step further and go back to the chapter, spring and winter and that cycle of nature and the impermanence of existence, we shouldn't try to hang on to existence as if it was going to make a difference. But we shouldn't just take the opposite end, which is to say, well, nothing matters, and just bail, right? We should enjoy our life while we have it, and then celebrate the fact that it is temporary, right? That everything will be in balance, and that spring will come, and then winter, and then another spring, another winter, and so forth and so on for millions and millions of years. And that's what I think about when I think about chapter 79. Yeah. If you Google that story, the Emperor and the Third Paintings, you'll find these paintings. You'll find people who have, tried to draw these paintings out. And there are lots of different ways you can look at the story. There's, well, did the guy who painted the snowy mountain, like, really, he didn't paint tranquility, because under that snow there's life and there are animals who are dying, and because it's like a frozen wasteland. And then the first painter, the babbling brook, right? There are fish struggling to survive, and grass growing and birds flying, and everyone's running around doing all this stuff, all being affected by everything around them. But yet that bird in that last painting was just sitting peacefully, very quiet, very calm, even though that rushing waterfall was all around them. So don't let our studies of Taoist thought and philosophy move you too much. Take them, learn from them, and then apply them, and then forget about them, as I've once been told. In fact, the thing I got told once was, the most Taoist thing you could do was memorize the Data Jing and then forget all about it, because you've internalized it, right? You are now living it. You don't need the book anymore. You just become one with its knowledge and its practice, and then you go live about your life. There's a famous line, I think it was a monk, and he said, he asked this, one guy asked this monk, what do I do after enlightenment? And the guy was like, pick up your bag and go. Something like that. Basically, even once you obtain all this knowledge, right, you still need to go live your life. There's still a whole world to go see. All right. Chapter 80. Opposites. Before emptying, there must be fullness. Before shrinking, there must be expanding. Before falling, there must be ascent. To destroy something, lead it to its extreme. To preserve something, keep to the middle. Although we speak of opposites, they are not truly antagonistic elements. All opposites are part of the same entity. Like a two-headed snake, opposites are two parts of the same whole. They define one another, as black defines white. They alternate with one another, as war alternates with peace. Whenever any phenomenon reaches its extreme, it will change toward its opposite, just as the darkest night begins to change towards dawn, and the coldest winter is followed by glorious spring. Therefore, anything that one wishes to destroy need only be led to its extreme or crushed while it is just appearing. For example, the two easiest times to destroy a tree are when it is so tall that it is about to topple, or so young that it can be easily uprooted. The same principle holds if one wishes to nurture something. You can prevent its destruction by bringing it close to, but not over, its apex. You can take a branch from an old tree and graft it. This is the wisdom of the middle ground. Followers of Tao change a situation when it reaches its apex. By joining their efforts to a new situation that is just budding, they attain perpetuity. Perpetuity. Yeah, that's right. All right. Opposites. So this brings up a good point. I'm not wearing my necklace today, but I have a yin yang on my necklace that's downstairs. But I think we all know what the yin yang looks like. You know what? I do. It's down here in the bottom corner of my screen, somewhere in one of these corners. But as you can see, the black turns, turning into white, the white turning into black, yin into yang, so forth and so on, forever. That's important that we remember that the yin yang is not a static symbol, right? The yin yang is supposed to be seen in motion as a spinning object. That is its true nature, is to move. And they are not completely opposite in the yin yang. That's why there is a little black circle in the white part and a little white circle in the black part. Or in this logo, it's a little moon, a little white crescent moon. But that's important, right? It's important that those are not all one or all the other, because that's not what we see in nature. Nature is more complex than good versus evil, right? Bad versus good, right versus wrong. There's always a little bit of both. There have been presidents of the United States that have done horrible things, but raised a family, right? Taught them some value of right and wrong, and those kids went on to lead fairly normal lives. Just the other day, there's this movie that had come out about a prison guard during World War II who did horrible things, and he lived just on the outside of this awful camp, let's just say, and raised a beautiful family, like just on the other side of these walls where these terrible things were going on. Zone of Interest is the film if you want to go see it. But as hard as it may seem, as hard as it may be to admit, life is not all one way and then all the other. Just look at spring, right? There are things that do not flourish in spring. There are plants that prefer winter over spring. There are plants that prefer spring over winter. It's not that they die, they just kind of hang on for dear life and they come back, right? So it's not always one or the other. In this one, it talks about opposites in this chapter, and that's what's getting at, right? Like they're opposites define each other and they create each other. You can't define what is good without defining what is bad. You can't define shorts without having pants or capris or something else, right? Like as soon as you start down that road, the subdivision and the categorization never ends. As soon as you are one thing, you are not another. And if you're not another, you have to be this other thing, or this other group, or this other minority, or this other whatever, right? And it there's a madness in that, right? That this is kind of alluding to. I was watching this Disney show with my kid years ago, and it was a show with a young Hispanic high school girl where she was talking to her teacher, who was also Hispanic, and she called herself Latinx, and he was like, "What? What's that?" She explained it to him. He was like, "Oh, I see." She's like, "What do you mean? Like, why does that not jive with you?" And he was like, "Look, we're always being called something. Like, it's just another way to try and put us in a bubble, right? It's another way to define a people group." And he was okay with words changing, but be careful how you label, right? Be careful how you categorize. Yeah, that's a little bit of Taoist thought kind of bleeding over into even a Disney show kind of gets it sometimes. Let's see. I like this part at the end where it says the same principle holds if one wishes to nurture something. You can prevent its destruction by bringing it close, but not over its apex. So getting back to that tree metaphor they use, you ever seen video of a palm tree during a hurricane? I mean, that palm tree is just going crazy. It's like bending everywhere, and you swear you're like, man, this is gonna break any second. Like this is gonna break, and it doesn't, right? And when the hurricane's over, all these signs have been knocked over, and these cars have been flown over, and there's all this trash everywhere, and power lines are down, telephone poles are snapped into. But man, that palm tree sure does look okay. Might be missing some leaves or some small branches, but it made it. Those leaves will regrow. So how is that possible? Because its strength is through its weakness. Its ability to bend makes it strong. If it were rigid and stiff like that telephone pole, it'll snap and break. But because it is weak and allows itself to bend in that wind, it survives. And so too are we. We need to find that balance, that middle ground. We don't want to be too strong that we can't change, that we're constantly fighting the natural change of life. But we don't want to just let everything push us around either. And there's a happy medium, there's a balance there that we need to live inside of. Okay. Chapter 81. Sailing. Infinite expanse. Seek ocean teeming with life. Turbulent, virile, ever-moving spread. seamlessly laid to the brilliant sky. I float on you in my fashioned womb, sustained against your green black depths. Those on land will never understand maritime life. Those of the sea are intimate with your moods. They navigate, but are ultimately helpless. Destinations become useless, drifting the sole reality. A sailor's fears dissolve into acceptance. Tao is sometimes compared to the ocean. Its depth is immeasurable. Its power rules over all who enter. We seek to sail it with our knowledge of knots, direction, mathematics, and charts. Yet our understanding is comparable to its vastness. The young have great ambitions about exploring both above and below the surface, while the old have given in. They know that there is no other alternative than to accept the ocean and float upon it. One who accepts is sustained. Those who go beyond its terms meet death. Thus the wise say that they float here and there without care. They trust in the overwhelming power of Tao. Indeed, guys. Indeed. Let's talk about sailing. What is sailing? Jump on this boat and you rely on your knowledge to help you survive from point A to point B. But you know what? You're never in control of the ocean. You're never in control of nature, wind, the seas. You know, before we had engines, we were just reluctant on wind. Now we have engines, so we're not reliant on the wind, but, giant waves come, and no matter how big of boats we make, there's always a bigger wave, right? And there's always a bigger hurricane waiting on the seas for us sometimes. And that's just like life. You can't fight everything all the time. Like, you are just asking to wear yourself out, whether it's burnout, whether it's frustration, anxiety, stress. Like, you are just going to go crazy fighting everything all the time. The part here where it says the old have given in. I once heard Taoism described as like an old person's religion, where, for whatever reason, you get to like that mid-30s, 40s, and you get that kind of midlife moment, and you're like, what does this all mean? And you're like, well, what is this Taoism thing? And it's like, just sit back and relax. Like, just take it easy. Like, try to not stress out so much. Maybe it's our own mortality kind of kicking in, right? Where you just don't want to fight anymore. And I gotta say, I'm 41 now. I remember being in my 20s and being very politically active and, voting all the time. And I still vote all the time here in the United States. But man, sometimes you kind of look out at the world around you and just think, I can't do anything about it. Like, what am I going to do? And we control the things we can, and we give up the things we can't. We find that balance, that middle ground. That is what the previous chapter was getting at the whole time. We have to find some way to coexist and be happier. And you can. It's not impossible, right? But I see so many people, especially, the social media warriors, who just have to fight that battle. Like, every comment they have to push, and every crazy chain on Reddit, or formerly Twitter, now X. It just goes on and on and on. And I've been guilty of it too. Like, I get it. Sometimes someone just knows what to do to get under your skin. But sometimes you just gotta let that go. Just gotta let it slide, and you'll feel better. You really will. You'll get off social media just try it for a day, right, and see how relaxed you can be. Um, yeah, just trust that the Tao is going to do what it does, and you can fight it, or you can relax and just let it take you. Um, in you know, in the real world, obviously, this is an oversimplification kind of metaphor. You, I, it's contradictory on purpose, right? Like, how do you kind of let the world take you where it wants you to go, and then not let yourself be walked over all the time? I don't know. It's hard, um, but you can do it. I know we can do it. Okay, chapter 82, Attunement. Traversing sun leads to a new season. Vernal breath attunes the leaves. Tao is here. It is who we are, and not always in harmony with it. And we are not always in harmony with it. Tao proceeds on its own way. It is we who are not ready to follow. Tao is absolutely sure in its movement. It is we who involve ourselves in amusement. Tao has no consciousness, yet it is supreme. It is we who think compulsively. Therefore, tuning ourselves to Tao is the basic task. We must make ourselves the perfect instrument, much in the way that a beautiful harp has all strings adjusted. If we are less than perfect, how will we harmonize with the universal music? Once we are attuned, we can become open to Tao. Where it leads, we follow without hesitation. Just as a musician expresses individual talent and understanding, and yet blends with the swelling magnificence of the orchestra, so too does the follower of Tao remain human, and yet in harmony with the universal. When the sun begins its new pattern, spring follows, the air warms, and the world rejoices. A new breath comes over all things, and even the trembling leaves are attuned to the vernal rhythm. Turn your face to the sun, and flowers know how to do, as flowers know how to do. Turn your face to Tao, as we should all do. Attunement. Are you a musician? You know a musician? You ever sang in choir? You know anything about instruments? Or the vibration of sound? When I was in college, I spent a couple of years as a music major at the University of North Texas, and a part of that degree program is you learn how acoustics work. You learn how vibration of strings function, how harmony works. And what you discover is that buried inside a vibration, you can actually find other notes. So inside one pitch is another pitch. They're called harmonics. And if you sing if you sing in harmony with that note, it actually makes the original note more powerful because the vibrations empower each other to be stronger. So too is the Tao and our life. If we live in harmony with the Tao, we will be stronger. Not physically stronger all the time, but emotionally stronger, more stable. Our life will be simpler, easier. But if we sing outside of the note, then dissonance occurs. Like a train whistle. You ever heard a train whistle? And it's like that kind of ear rattling, brain jarring tone. So what they do is they make that pitch be a dissonant notes. So for example, two notes that are only a half step apart from each other is that very dissonant sound. It's like this real kind of almost like anxiety inducing pitch. and tone. Car horns, right? The same way. And they're meant to be that way because they're jarring, right? They grab your attention. But harmonious notes are powerful, right? They move you. They are happy sounding a lot of times. They just feel right. They feel natural. And that's what this chapter is really getting at. We can attune ourselves into the Tao. Now, I want to point out that the Tao here has no consciousness, yet it is supreme. So the Tao is not some person sitting somewhere that's like moving everything around visibly. Right? The Tao is a natural flow of existence. It's just the name we have given it, right? Is Tao. But do I believe there's a spiritual body sitting somewhere hanging out and like making all these logical decisions? No. And that's what this is getting at too, right? It is it is existence itself. It is supreme, right? All of existence is existence, and you cannot overrule existence because it's all within existence. How many times can I say existence in one sentence? Yeah, therefore tuning yourself into nature, into the harmony of nature, is the most basic yet most important task you can possibly have, right? It's the thing that will cause everything else in your life to follow. For example, when the sun begins its new pattern, spring follows. The air warms, the world rejoices. So when one thing happens, when a simple thing occurs, like the passage of time, all things take their cues. So if you harmonize yourself with your natural state, so too will things flow from you and outwards. And then you will be more accepting of the things flowing inwards to you. All right. Chapter 83. Parting. Parting is such sweet sorrow. You and I are assumed forever when we became companions. But now, unhappy, you are leaving. The sky turns to bitter condescence, unslaked by resignation. There are times when we have been lucky enough to have companions on our spiritual path. But the time of parting often comes without welcome. When our friends decide to leave, we are often left without doubt, confusion, sometimes guilt. Anyone may leave the path. They won't suffer damnation. They will only walk a different path. The rule for those who follow Tao is this: walk the path together as long as you can, and when you must part, never hold your companion back. Should one seek to have no feelings at all regarding friends? After all, the sages constantly warn against attachment. Yet emotion is part of what makes us human. We may understand philosophically why a companion must leave, but we need not deny our feelings as we walk on alone. Indeed. So this gets back to, really being alone, right? And what that... Remember the Taoists who kind of like live in the forest and they just abandon everything and they just go off? Okay, well, sometimes that might be okay. But if you have a choice, you should go it with somebody, multiple people. You should not remove yourself from everything and think that that's what, nature is trying to get you to do. That would be in disharmony. Now that we've learned a little bit about that makes more sense. It would be in disharmony with Tao. And it just kind of explains it here at the end, right? And you can leave the path, right? And you're not going to go to hell because of it. right? Just because you do something that's not harmonious with nature and the world around you doesn't mean you're going to burn for all eternity. It's going to cause strife, right? It's going to cause pain to yourself or someone else. Going to be uncomfortable, maybe, right? Just like playing two, a black note and a white note on a piano next to each other at the exact same time, kind of like makes your inside shrivel a little bit, makes you shiver inside. That's what going off harmony is going to feel like. So if you can harmoniously be with somebody else and go together, remember what we were saying earlier, where the vibrations will empower each other when you're together. That's what being with someone feels like. So in high school, I was in drumline, and we knew that if we played our drums together, right? Let's just take the snare drums for example. If all the snare drums played together, it was louder. But if they played just randomly, then it actually was quieter. So those waves actually reinforce each other and produce a greater sound. That harmony, that wave harmony, produces louder tones and has a bigger impact on the listener. So if you can harmonize yourself with somebody else and you harmonize together, that will push both of you forward, right? That will propel you all into a better, more emotionally stable place. Emotion is what is part of what makes us human. It says that right here. It's not the goal. It shouldn't be our goal to remove emotion from each other and be all logical. Like we're not Spock from Star Trek or Data from the Next Generation, right? Like we are human beings. We have emotions. They are a part of us. It's not the goal to rid ourselves of emotion. It's the goal to not allow these emotions to completely overrun who we are and what we do. We shouldn't give up who we are because we're sad. We shouldn't lash out and hurt people because we're angry. There are proper ways to internalize and then let go of emotion. And a lot of that can be done with other people around you. Isolating yourself, while great for a while, it's been shown by a lot of scientific study that we are social animals. We define ourselves through interaction, whether that be online interaction or in-person interaction. Solitary confinement does not help really anybody. Now you can adjust to it eventually, maybe, but it forever changes who you are, right? You've permanently adjusted and changed who you naturally used to be. And that, again, that's not in harmony with Tao. That's not in harmony with nature or our lives. So here at the end, we may understand philosophically why a companion must leave, but we need not deny our feelings as we walk on alone. So when somebody leaves us, if that companion that you're traveling together with, if someone has to leave, then understand that, like all things, the impermanence of life applies to your relationships as well. People will come in your life, they'll come out of your life, situations will arise, they'll go, and knowing how to let go is one of those natural parts of who we are. I think a few chapters back when we were talking about, death, we shouldn't be afraid of it. We should accept it. The fact that our lives ends makes our existence even more special, because we didn't used to exist and now we do, and then we won't. And it will continue, that cycle will continue forever, but just not as we are now. And yeah, learning to let go is learning to accept, right? When your partner, or your friend, or your relative, or whoever it is, when they need to leave, you need to accept that and watch them go down their path, and you go down your path. And I always felt it was kind of a cop out, and I got dumped to say this, but paths will merge and diverge, and maybe they merge again. Maybe they don't. Or your path will cross with somebody else's. You never know what's going to happen, right? You can never really tell what the consequences of any one action are going to be. So it's okay to feel sad. It's okay to be alone. But you don't need to pretend that you're not sad when that happens. It's okay. All right. One more. We'll call it a day. Intellect. Scholars, drunk on words and obscure meanings, weave a tangled web of concordances. Simple practice never occurs to them. Give up education and the world will be better. There are many who seek Tao through the intellect. They reveal in thousands of concordances, seek similarities in all the world's religions, conduct learned discourses for enthralled audiences, but they would reach the truth faster if they tied their thoughts to experience. The intellect is inherently dualistic. It makes distinctions and creates new connections between concepts and calls that, quote, meaning. This type of analytical thinking is extremely limited in the face of Tao, which is not fully rational, not fully quantitative, not fully describable. Though most followers of Tao are learned, they also realize that the intellect is but one aspect in what must be a multifaceted approach to Tao. It is said one must give up education, not because we should be dumb, but because we must seek a level of consciousness through the intellect. We must study, but not to the point that emphasizes on experience, and meditation is lost. If we can combine the intellect and direct experience with our meditative mind, then there will be no barrier to the wordless perception of reality. It is true that the Tao really can't be explained in words. It must be experienced. Do you remember the Matrix movies back in the early 2000s? Remember there's a trailer, the first film, where Morpheus, one of the characters, says, no one can be told what the Matrix is. You have to experience it. You have to see it. And that's basically the Tao, right? In that sense. There's only so much we can use with words, right? Words are incapable of describing it because it is something beyond dualism. Right? Remember we were saying earlier that once you categorize something, once you name something, you have to name its opposite. And once you know what something is, you know what it is not. Well, the Tao is all. It doesn't have an opposite, right? It has opposite parts. It has yin and yang, but it spins forever. So it's really, there's no human word that we could ever use to describe what that is naturally. We use Tao, of course that translates to the way, or the natural way, or way finding, right, for Taoism or for Taoists. But we really can't describe it in full because of just the way language works. When you read Taoist texts, you'll find kind of this anti-education sentiment in some of the passages. And a lot of people think, well, they take those passages to mean we're supposed to be dumb. We're not supposed to go to school or just learn a trade and don't educate ourselves and just let that be what it is. But that's not what the meaning behind it is. If you read the entire Tao Te Ching or the entire Zhuangzi, you'll find out that it is important to study and to learn and to meditate within ourselves. That's how we grow spiritually. But at the same time, wasting your energy or your mind on kind of useless studies is problematic. I hate to, I'm a huge space fan. I love watching rockets and learning about rockets. And I think the space program has brought us incredible technology. But man, I read some of these studies sometimes, these scientific studies. I'm just like, did we need to spend money on that? Like, what could we have used that money for? Or, whose time was wasted to prove something everybody knew already? It just seems maddening sometimes. Or the story I told about the Disney Channel show where, we keep subdividing ourselves into smaller and smaller groups. When does it end? It just doesn't. Right? Once you go down that road, you can't stop. Because as soon as you divide something, as soon as you define what it is, you define what it isn't. Like, I remember being a kid, and genres of music were very simple. There was like rock, classic rock, hard rock, and that was it. Right? And sometimes it was just rock. You had rock, pop, classical, and that was it. And then rap came around, and then it was slash hip hop. Then it was alternative, and grunge, and heavy metal, and now it goes on. Now there's indie rock, and I mean, walk into a music store. When was the last time you walked into a music store? And it's just genres and categories and subcategories and subgenres everywhere. And books are the same way. Books are divided and subdivided and categorized. It just goes on and on and on and on and on. When I was trying to list my new book on Amazon yesterday, it was like, choose your genres. And there were like 10 master genres. And then I would open up one and there'd be like 20 subgenres. And then I'd open up that level and there'd be like 5 more sub-genres. And just like, what's the point? Right? You're just feeding the algorithm, right? It's like knowledge for knowledge's sake. It's division for division's sake. It doesn't help really anyone besides advertisers, right? It's just to pinpoint you a little bit better so they can show you better ads or like sell you more stuff. But yeah, Tao goes beyond the intellect. It goes beyond your conscious thought. And we experience that through our meditation, through who we are. We have to experience life to really understand and grasp it. It's, if we just slept all the time, we wouldn't know anything about life because we just sat there. It's important to kind of understand life needs to be experienced. Tao needs to be experienced. And we can do it if we turn ourselves inward and remove some of this unneeded, unwanted noise. Then we can focus on ourselves and become more of who we truly are. It's not about changing what you're doing. It's not about Taoism trying to be like, hey, don't do that. Become a better Taoist. Taoism just wants you to become a better you, right? Don't compare yourself to me. Don't compare yourself to other people of other religions, of other faiths, right? It's about becoming who you are naturally. And we just sometimes need a little bit of extra help, a little bit of quiet, a little bit of peace to really see who we can be. Okay, everyone, it's that time. It's time to go away for a whole week. I will be back next week. Next week will be our first episode of 2024. Will be January 7th. Thank you guys so much for being here today. Thank you for listening. If you attend any of the live streams, if you have attended any of them, thank you. This is episode 15. So we ended up doing 15 episodes this year. And man, what a crazy ride it's been. If you had told me 17 weeks ago that I'd be still doing this and not giving up after one episode, I would have said you were crazy. In fact, this podcast a couple of weeks ago, it was the 6th highest rated podcast in philosophy in Ireland. I don't know why, but if you're listening to this in Ireland, shout out to you. Whoever made this rank in Apple Podcasts, man, I appreciate it. So big shout out to you. Yeah. And here's 2024. I think it's going to be a great year. I'm going to try and get myself a better camera soon and get a bunch more podcast episodes up for y'all. Maybe we'll make it a whole year this time. Maybe we'll make it to this book. I don't think so. I think even with doing 4 or 5 chapters a week, I'm not sure I'll make it through this one. But hey, I guess we'll keep going to 2025 if we don't. Okay, don't forget to read The Taoist online at thetaoist.online. Or if you want to read more of my work, you can always go to thetaoistcorner.net, where I also post recorded versions of this podcast and write a little bit of my own. I'll have a new book out very shortly, probably in the next week. So we'll talk about that next week. But yeah, look for it where all ebooks are available. It will be called A Beginner's Guide to Taoism. Okay, thank you so much. Love you guys. I'll talk to you next week. Bye.